You're listening to What We Aim to Do, a podcast about vocation. My name is Megan Nichols, and I'm the author of Animal and Fit, a poetry chapbook from Bell Point Press. I'm a poetry editor at Variant Literature, a freelance copywriter, and I'm obsessed with people who make and share interesting things with the world. Today, I'm speaking with Colleen Welsch, a music producer, actress, YouTuber, owner of the content marketing agency The Glossy Type, and owner of the Freelance Writer's Guide, a course for copywriters. After watching Colleen's YouTube channel for over a year, I somewhat impulsively emailed her asking if she wanted to start a podcast. What you're about to listen to is our third ever conversation, and in my opinion, it's a pretty great one. We discuss how Colleen built her copywriting business, the impact doing improv has had on her life, how she's approaching her music production goals, and how it feels to not always be a six-figure business owner. We begin our conversation with Colleen telling us how she got into acting and improv. I wish I could call myself an actress. I don't wish it enough to learn how to act and do it, but just to say it would be fun.
I mean, you don't need to know how to act to call yourself an actress, but I do technically occasionally get paid like $30 to act. So
That's amazing. Well, how do you do that?
So I moved to the city that I live in, Cleveland, in 2020, and obviously there weren't a lot of like social opportunities in 2020, but the next year I was cruising on Instagram one day and I saw that there was a local improv theater and they were offering level 1 classes. And just like immediately without thinking about it, I was like, hell yeah. And I signed up for it. I like just got my credit card and signed up. So I started taking those classes. I took 4, they have like level 1 through 4. And I took all of them. I met a great group of people and we're really good friends. I dated one of the guys and we broke up, but we're still friends. And yeah, I would say that's like the core of a lot of my friend group is through the improv community in Cleveland. And I really like it. I feel like learning how to do improv has helped me so much with social anxiety because I quit. Sorry if you can hear my dog barking. I quit drinking in 2019 and then like I just found social situations to be like really difficult and I was like, did I have social anxiety this whole time and I was just drinking to cover it up? So improv helped with that because I just kind of realized that like life is improvising. And yeah, if anyone has social anxiety, like I know doing an improv class sounds like the worst possible thing, but literally every person in there will have severe social anxiety also, and then you can all get over it together, and it's a wonderful thing. And I meet a lot of people that don't drink through that, which is nice too.
Oh, that's interesting. The correlation or the connection between not drinking and doing improv.
People who don't drink have to like look for other things to do for fun that aren't going to bars.
When you stopped drinking, did you decide, okay, I'm done? Or did you kind of fall back in, fall back out, fall back in over a period of time?
That's a good question. I had like breaks from drinking at various times throughout my 20s because I started drinking when I was 19 and I quit when I was 30. And especially like towards the end of my 20s, I was more like, okay, now I should quit because as time went on, my hangovers got worse and worse and worse. So I would quit for like a week or two and then I'd be like, okay, that was a good break. Now let's get back into it. But when I started seeing a therapist in 2019, she was like, I think you should quit drinking for a month and see how you feel. And so that time it just stuck. Like I felt so much better. And I was really sick of how I was living my life and I was ready to make a big change. But the last time I drank, I didn't know it was the last time I was going to drink. And I wish I would have had something better than like, I had like a White Claw or something. I wish I would have had like a drink that I enjoyed. I grew up in a family of drinkers and partiers. And so that's just like what I saw growing up. And so when I became an adult, that's what I did also, because that's what was modeled for me, and I didn't really think about it. But I think I'm actually allergic to alcohol, because I used to just get the worst hangovers like for days, and it was a really big problem. And obviously it's not good for your mental health or your health in general, but as someone with depression and anxiety, like the last thing I really need is
Yeah.
to be drinking alcohol. I do miss it sometimes, and I find that being sober, especially not being involved in any of like the recovery communities like AA or NA or anything, like, it can be really isolating. And it's also really difficult to date, because so much of like dating world takes place with alcohol present. So that's been a real struggle for me.
Every time I make a mistake in the realm of substances, even though I don't actively consider myself an addict, it feels as if I have done something like terrible. I've built it up to be a very large thing in my mind. Taking away some of that emotional charge would be a good first step.
Yeah, like just the shame around it. Because it's like you're not making an empowered choice to not drink.
Right.
You're doing it out of shame.
Yeah.
Which is a good motivator for people, but for some people it like is, it almost like makes you want to do it more, because then you're like, well, I'm just a piece of shit. I'm just gonna, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you are the owner of the Glossy Type and the Freelance Writer's Guide, and musician and YouTuber and improv. Like, what is the thing that you're most excited to spend your time on?
I think right now it's YouTube. My priorities will shift. I don't.
Do
I'm
they
not like
cycle?
they cycle, yeah. So right now it's YouTube, and then music, and then the Freelance Writer's Guide. And oh wait, but improv. I don't know. I think about improv as like a separate thing. It's more like a hobby. It's not really like something that I want to do and take bigger. I used to want to be on Saturday Night Live, but now I'm like, I really need more sleep than I think the cast members get on that show. So I don't think that'd be a good fit for me.
Do you feel like you equally love all of your creative babies the same, or some of them, like you're doing them, but eventually it'd be great to phase out?
I do not love all my creative babies the same. I really like am not very interested in glossy type anymore. As we were speaking about before we hit record, I just like haven't been having any luck with clients recently, but I'm also not really interested in doing that kind of work anymore. So I think like the universe is giving me back what I'm putting out there, which is nothing. It does seem like recently, within the past 6 months, anytime someone has contacted me for help with marketing or copywriting, they have just like ghosted me or said something like really mean to me for no reason and then ghosted me. So to answer your question, I think it does have a lot to do with like flow, like just like what's coming up. Like if I had a really exciting copywriting opportunity come up, I might be more interested in that, but I can't imagine what would be an exciting copywriting opportunity for me at this point. And but then there's like kind of like a procrastination thing happening too. Like I feel like probably my number one dream, well, I don't know. It's like I want to say that music and being a music producer is like my number one thing, but it's it seems so much harder than being a YouTuber. Like being a YouTuber is like it seems so clear cut and easy. Like I know exactly what I need to do and can just do it, and makes it more interesting to me because it feels like it's a challenge, but it's a challenge I can do versus music production and having a music production business. I'm like, where do I get clients for that? Am I really good enough? Like, it just brings up so much stuff that it makes me kind of like not want to do it. Versus YouTube is like, you just make a video and upload it, and people are like, great. And I just think it's easier.
Explain to me what music production is, which I know sounds silly. Because I do know what it is kind of on the
Exactly.
surface level, but as a business, what does that look like?
So, music production, it can look like a lot of things, but it's basically you are taking a song that you're just singing or playing with the piano or playing with the guitar or something, you're playing it live. You're taking that and you're recording it, and then you're adding all the other instruments, whether you're recording those live or adding them MIDI or samples or whatever later, and like creating that like finished recording that you would stream on Spotify or listen to on an album.
And you make your own music. So in your mind, do you feel like your work as a musician is separate from your work as a music producer for other people? Are those two different things?
Because I use my own music in my portfolio, and I don't have like a lot of tracks I've worked on with other people yet, so I have to use my own music. But I did produce it, and I did everything by myself, so count those as the same thing.
You talked about a music production business. Where do I even find clients? It sounds really hard. So I'm just wondering, like, do you want to do that for other people, or do you just want to make your own music? And if there was no money, you had all the money, would you still be interested in producing other people's music at all?
Question. Yes, I would be interested in producing other people's music if money were no object, because I only have so much to say as an artist. And, you know, there are so few music or female music producers out there. I mean, so few. I think like 3% of all music producers are women or identify as women. It's so small. Just like think about myself when I was younger, and I was like so insecure, and like there's no way I would have been comfortable enough to work with a male music producer when I was younger. So like I hope that I can be that safe person for female artists to be vulnerable, and then I can help them to communicate their ideas and create their art. And it's really fun to just like come in and someone has a song and they have a vision for it, and then you just translate that vision and make it come to life. There's something really satisfying about that for me. And like some of the artists I've worked with in the past, like I helped a singer-songwriter named Ashley Brooke Toussaint with a cover of TNT by AC/DC for this like charity thing. She was donating the track, and she's so soft-spoken, and like her songs are like she does a lot of songs for children, and they're like really beautiful, but they're really soft, and she has like a really soft, high, beautiful voice. And I was like, what? You want to do TNT? And she's like, yeah, I want it to sound like really ethereal. And I was like, okay. And it was so fun making an ethereal version of TNT with her. And I get so excited when I produce music, and um I love working with other people's ideas, because then it's like a creative challenge. They're like, I have this pop song, I want it to sound like Fleetwood Mac. I have this TNT song I want to do, but I want it to sound ethereal. And I love that. Um I love the challenge of it. And I have to say, like, when I'm doing it, I just get I get like such a rush. I'll be like, hell yeah, like this is fucking awesome. And I don't get that from anything else. Like occasionally I'll make a YouTube video and I'll be like, that's pretty good. But I don't feel that way about a lot of the stuff that I do. Okay, when I was doing copywriting, sometimes I would be like, that's really good. But I definitely get the biggest rush from music. And while I like making my own music, I do not have any desire to like promote it or do any marketing beyond like every once in a while I'll get like, oh yeah, that's a good idea for a TikTok, and I'll do it. But I don't really want to perform. I don't want to like do photo shoots and make videos. Like I just don't want to think about it. So I would rather just do the music part and let other people worry about the rest of it. I'm just fun.
Why is music production harder? And that the answer might be, well, the industry is totally different. You don't know what you're talking about, in which case, like, tell me. But also, I don't know, like, is it that is it that much harder than copywriting?
Probably not. You do TBM, right? To be magnetic.
Yes. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like the combination of the unblocking, the expanding, and aligned action,
Right.
which is what you need to manifest anything. So when I like became a copywriter, I had a lot of expansion like right at the beginning, which kind of caused the unblocking to just occur naturally. I worked with this guy. I was like a digital marketing assistant at a beauty brand, and I worked with this guy who did freelance web development on the side. And I was writing the blog posts for this beauty brand, and he was like, "Hey, I have this beauty client and they need blog posts. Can you help them?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I don't know. I don't think so. I don't really know what to do." And he's like, "It's really easy. Like, you just tell them an amount and you just send them an invoice and then you just send it to them." And I'm like, "But what about taxes?" And he was like, "Just sign up for QuickBooks Self-Employed. It's super easy." Like, he was just so like, "It's easy." And I was like, "Well, I don't know how much to charge." And then I was like, "I was thinking this much." And he was like, "No, charge $1,000." And I was like, "Are you sure?" And he was like, "I'm sure. Yeah." And so I did. And that person, his client, was just like, "Okay, yeah." And I did the work. And then I was like, "Whoa, that was crazy." So he was just because he came into my life and just told me that stuff, it allowed me to like expand really fast. And then I was introduced to a woman who was a freelance copywriter, and she was making $200 an hour, and she had like a bunch of experience in the industry. And she gave me some tips. And that after I talked to those two people, no, there was a third person I talked to too. He had a marketing agency, and he recommended the book Book Yourself Solid by Michael Port. And with those three sources, I just really felt like I can do this now. And having that feeling, I never had that feeling before. Even though I wanted to start freelancing, I just didn't know how to do it. And I just wasn't like expanded and unblocked enough. And I also had like a really solid why. Like I was very clear finally on what I wanted to do. And this is actually because I did shrooms. But I had like this crazy spring in 2017 where I went to China, and I had never left the United States before, but I went to China for a week with my friend for fun. And I was like, "Oh my God, I haven't seen anything in this world. I'm 28. What am I doing?" And like around that same time, I did shrooms for the first time. And that just really like locked it in there for me. I was like, I have got to like take control of my life and start like aiming this ship in the direction that I want to go in, because we are cruising in the wrong direction. So it was really hard to get things started. And the biggest sacrifice is that I had to leave LA where I was living because I just wasn't making enough money at the time. I had no concept of money, and I'm still not very good with money, but I had none. And I talked to my aunt about it, who is like this high powered businesswoman. And she was like, "You have two choices at this point. You can either get a job and try to freelance on the side, or you can move in with your parents and just start your business and not have to worry about living expenses." And I was so lucky that I had the opportunity, but it wasn't like pretty. I had to like pack up my like I pretty much got rid of everything I owned, and then I got in my car. I flew my dad out, and then we drove back to Ohio together. And then I was just working out of my parents' basement for like 9 months. But I was very like since I was unblocked and expanded, it was really easy to like do the aligned action. Like it was hard to do, but like mentally it wasn't hard to do. And I was also like, well, I can't go back to LA. Like I gave up my whole life to do this, so I'm just gonna do it now. Like and I told you I'm so stubborn that works for me. Like I'm like I told everyone I was doing this, so now I have to do it because I do not like to go back on my word. And I haven't had those expansion opportunities with music production as much. And I think it's really hard to see myself doing it when most people who do it are men. And that's a really big block for me. But I really keep like plugging away at the expansion piece. I try to listen to podcasts, I try to watch YouTube videos, I try to read books. Like right now I'm reading Barry Gordy's autobiography, and pretty much all this stuff is made by men. So I really just have to like rectify in my head that I can do it even if I am a woman. It's just harder to visualize. That was a really
Um,
long answer.
oh, that was an amazing answer, and that was really helpful. But I wonder if I let this idea of, like, I've become superstitious around needing an expander, right? And so I'm trying to reframe what I think I need when it comes to the word expansion. I have already expanded myself in the sense that I have done kind of impossible things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I have done things that statistically are really hard to do, really competitive, really unlikely because of my own like credentials or lack of credentials, and yet I have done the thing. And it was in a totally different industry, like a totally different world, but I have still done seemingly like to me impossible things. Anyway, so I don't know if that resonates with you at all.
I think that's the issue is that what I want it to look like, I haven't seen someone do. It's hard to just imagine that something is real. Like, I feel the same way about a partner. It's really hard for me to imagine someone who would be an appropriate partner for me, someone who would be a good match. And that makes it hard to believe that it could exist. But of course, it can exist. Anything can exist. But you just like pull little pieces of different things. Like I have like one friend that I'm like, oh yeah, he would be like a good partner for me, except for like there's these few things, but like the energy is there. So that's kind of like it's not even all the details. It's like the energy that I'm trying to suss out. And um for music, it's like I just don't know enough people in this world, but I am going to keep going with it. I feel like expansion is so much more powerful when you meet someone IRL too, right? Like
Yeah.
you go to their space, and I have met people who have recording studios, but I that's the other thing is I really haven't figured out like what do I want it to look like? Like do I want to own a recording studio? Do I want to be renting a recording studio? Do I want to live in Cleveland? Still path of learning, I guess. So, and I'm not saying that I think it could happen for me. I definitely think it could happen for me, but it's even what I want.
Yeah.
And what do I want it to look like if it is what I want? So that is something I'm still trying to figure out. And there's a lot of stuff that I need to unblock, especially, I know I keep bringing this up, but about men, because I keep having like the trigger of like men giving me criticism and like constructive criticism. And I'm just like, fuck you. Like, and I get really upset about it. And I'm like, I feel like I'm crumbling under a lifetime of the patriarchy and like lashing out at men now. And I don't want to be like that, but there's something inside of me that is making me act like that. And I feel like that's going to be a really big thing to unblock and get to the bottom of this year. Totally lost track of your question and I apologize.
It's okay. I don't think it was a question. Maybe what I am trying to do is to zoom out and think more metaphorically, because there are definitely things that I think are impossible or too difficult, and I don't have a framework. But what I don't want to do, because, and I'm not saying you do this, but what I definitely do is I can't imagine it. So therefore it definitely isn't possible. Sometimes what helps me is to think about all the things that I couldn't actually imagine. I mean, I couldn't imagine living past the age of like 22. And then when I hit 22, I was like, I don't think I'll be alive past the age of 30. I mean, there's just no way. We don't have, that is not what things are going to look like. I was in a really unfortunate relationship for a long time and I couldn't see anything beyond that. And so sometimes when I like can't see my future or like I can't imagine ever not being insecure or certain things, what expands me or like pulls me through that moment is remembering all the times that I've been surprised. Oh, I had no idea that this life could even happen. And I wasn't given a vision beforehand. I just stumbled my way there.
In the feeling worthy DI that I do almost every day, like, I sometimes use myself as an expander, and that is something that I sometimes suggest in their content is like, have you done something like this in the past? Can you use yourself as an expander? I like heard on a podcast of someone who just like kept a picture of themselves when they were like feeling really expansive, and then they would just like look at it and like remember how they felt when that picture was taken and like try to reproduce that feeling. So yeah, there's a lot of little tricks that you can do if you're like, especially if you're like, oh, I live in old Cleveland. How am I supposed to? I can't really relate to Rick Rubin or someone. Yeah. But then if I go back and I read like the Beastie Boys book, and like Rick Rubin started Def Jams from his NYU dorm room. Like, I'm like, all right. Or I'm reading Berry Gordy's book now, and he started Motown from his house in Detroit. How is that different from my house in Cleveland? It's not. Like, I could do what he did.
You know what's really interesting too, because you said, what is it, like less than 3% of music producers are women? But I would imagine that there's a lot of like women in Cleveland making music that need a music producer that
there are, yeah,
would really like to work with a woman. I don't mean to undermine how difficult it is, because I'm sure it's incredibly hard and I don't know anything about it. But there is this sort of like interesting idea of like, well, there's less than 3% of women that I have to compete with to be the like nice, not critical man music producer, right? Like there's like a big open opportunity.
You're so right. That's like another way to look at it. Like I almost have no competition as a music producer.
Because if I was like start like making music, I will cry. Sometimes I'll cry just if a man like looks at me like directly. I'm like, are you being mean to me? I can't handle it. That's my own stuff, but so when I meet a woman that is supportive and nice and wants me to succeed, you've got an opportunity.
I went to a somatic healer in 2022, and it was like thing that made me like not terrified of men was like going into this very intensive 2-week somatic healing program. But before that, I mean, I couldn't work with men. Like, I had no friends who were men. Like, the only men I knew were, like, ones I was related to or were married to my friends. Like, I knew no men. and I worked in fashion and beauty, so there's hardly any men around there. So, when I look at things in that perspective, like, I have really come a long way with that, and I'm sure that there are a lot of women who feel the same way that I used to feel. I think all people are equal, but I do think that men and women operate on different wavelengths, and there's just something so different about creating with another woman versus creating with a man that I've really noticed doing improv. Like, it's so much easier to do a scene with another woman because we're just like, I see you, I get you, like we are on the same wavelength. Where with men, it's like, you're like, we're doing this, but like, sex? I don't know. Like, sometimes that comes up and it's weird and uncomfortable. But thank you for saying that. And that does make me feel a lot better. Like, that's like a good niche. And why not? Why not me?
You've done like harder things, arguably, right? Running a business is very much akin to being an artist. And I'm upset that more people don't respect that and honor that. It is still a lot of generative work and generative brain power, which is different than when you were receiving assignments, doing the assignment. So do you ever consider becoming an employee and then using all of that hustle business owner energy on the music production and YouTube? Or are you definitely not going to do that?
I've thought about it. If I could get a remote job and like do nothing and get a paycheck, yeah, that would be great. But
Me too. That sounds great.
if I'm thinking about like, oh, I have to actually work for 40 hours or God forbid go somewhere to work, that doesn't, no, because I only work, I mean, on a busy week, 25 hours ever. And that's like true work. Like I am truly working during those 25 hours. So that is a lot of work. But I I would be open to like getting a part-time job that was like that was just like to get me out of the house and like meet more people. Um like even like in a coffee shop or something because I do feel like I'm really isolated because I like live alone and I work from home.
I volunteer a couple of times a month, and that's in person at a food room. And I'm not religious, but it's a food ministry, so everybody else there is quite religious, and they're also all over the age of like 60. Um, but like we have a prayer circle, and I get to like hold people's hands, and everyone's really nice. I feel like volunteering, if people can afford to do it, which frankly sometimes I can't, but it's like, I'll just do it anyway. But for remote workers and freelance workers, I think that it's like people don't talk about it enough, but it really can fill that person need.
I would fall into the category of I can't afford to volunteer at this point. But someday I would love to. I've always wanted to like volunteer with like refugee organizations, people who help refugees get settled in the US. I had a friend who was a refugee from Algeria to Norway, and like just hearing his story, I was like, man, that would fucking suck. Like,
Yeah.
that would be terrible. And I've lived abroad by choice. It's very stressful living in another country. You don't speak the language, and I can't imagine just being forced into that situation.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky enough to speak English, where you can pretty much get away with speaking English in most places, honestly. Like, I can't imagine being like, oh, I only speak Arabic, and now I live in Cleveland. Like,
Yeah.
what would
Oh
you
my
do?
God. I don't know. I mean, I sometimes when I'm feeling very like financially stressed and overwhelmed, which brings me to my last question, which I'll ask in 1 second. But when I'm feeling that way, and also like I'll get a little bit self-defeatist and go, well, I don't need money. I have a low cost of living. I'll just like choose to be broke. That's okay. That's a choice. I'll remember that then I like can't volunteer. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why one should want to make a good living. Anyway, knowing like, look, if you had more money coming in, you could volunteer more. You could do more things. And that motivates me out of my self-pity. Okay, so my last question is about money and the fact that I am not very good with money. And you said you're not very good with money. And like, here I am. I can freelance. I have like, I don't really think that I have businesses just because they're not fully branded. I couldn't sell them right. Like by Seth Godin's definition, for sure, like I'm a true freelancer. Whereas I think that you've built up like businesses. They're proper. Sometimes for me, when I am so broke, my self-worth will plummet and I will forget the fact that I have 14 years of digital marketing experience, that I've worked with really exciting companies. I have like a file full of nice things that people have told me that they mean. They're not just saying it to be kind. They like are appreciative of my work. And yet I'm like, I can't afford a new car. And so I not only feel bad about myself for like not being able to mismanage money, but I actually think that like all of that experience is gone. It doesn't mean anything. I can't get new clients. I can't charge people. Oh my God, I'm asking for more than $20 an hour. You're like a terrible person. How could you possibly ask for money if you don't already have $100,000 in the bank? Anyway, I find this to be one of like the most frustrating things about myself. Do you relate?
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Yeah, 100%. It's hard as a business owner slash freelancer, if that's what you prefer to call yourself, to like not tie your worth to your business because you really spend a lot of time thinking about your time in terms of money. So like when you freelancer, you have a set amount of time you can work. Like there's a maximum, and if you reach that maximum, you have to raise your rates. They need to keep raising them because if you keep booking, obviously the demand is exceeding the supply. So it makes sense to raise your rates. But what about when there's no demand? Like, do you drop your rates then? And how did I go from being a $200 an hour copywriter to a $40 an hour copywriter? And it makes you feel like you've done something wrong and like suddenly lost all your skills. The advice that I've received is like you can raise your rates as the demand increases, but then you can't drop them. So then you're like stuck at $200 an hour. And yeah, I'm definitely in a situation right now where I don't have as many clients as I used to. Granted, I don't want clients and I'm not actively looking for them. So that's why I'm having this result. But in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm actually bad at copywriting. I was never good at it. Like it was all just a fluke. But the truth is, like, I'm just not interested in pursuing that. You get like the internal critic that wants to come in and be like, oh, so look who's fallen.
Yeah.
It's not real. It's a choice. It's a choice I'm making.
It is true that I'm not great with balance. So what happens is I work a lot, I make a lot of money, we're like flying high for 3 months, and then I go, great. Now I can just be a mom for 2 months because I've barely seen, like I haven't done anything for the last 3 months. So now we'll just like ride the cash wave that we have built. And then I have to go, okay, now I have to build up and pitch, and then things may or may not go as fast. So I can be not great at operations. That's an operational problem. It was such a breakthrough when I met somebody and he was like, you are a really talented marketer and strategist, and you're a great writer. You are god awful at negotiation. You have a real problem here. And that was really helpful for me. Like, okay, that's like a whole role. That's a sales role. And it's okay that I am not amazing at the sales role, but I can still have the technical skill. And so, yeah, it is tricky though to remember that during times when things are very lean. The actual ability, like the thing that I am charging people for, that has not gone away.
And also, I don't think there's anything wrong with like vacillating between having busy seasons and slow seasons where you're spending more time with your son. I think that sounds nice.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, it's not bad. I need to plan better. I need to have like better buffers for sure. But no, in theory, it's not bad. I guess we don't have any more time for questions, but I feel like we talked about things.
This was really nice. Thank you.